you, Anna, for that lovely introduction. And it is so great to see this collection. It's been traveling for a while, and as Anna mentioned earlier, you always see new things when you see works of art that you're familiar with in different settings, and it's from all by different people. So it's great to see it. It looks fantastic. It's like visiting with old friends. So I'm going to go through a number of slides pretty quickly and leave some time, I hope, for discussion and questions, because I always learn, I think, from questions, and a dialogue is also always fun and actually in keeping with Abby's weed gray spirit, with one world through art and communication through art. So who is Abby Weed Gray? I'm going to go through quick for those who haven't had time to delve into the exhibition. Abby was born in 1903 in St. Paul, Minnesota. You see two photos of her there. She ended up going to Vassar College, and after college got $1,000 from her father to travel abroad. And it was supposed to be for the summer, and she ended up extending it into 9 months, which would be hard to do these days. She spent some time in Latvia because there was a connection to and the consul general there, or the ambassador, and took classes. She spent some time in Paris, which would have been remarkable in the 20s, learning French. She came back, spent a year at McAllister College, getting a teaching certificate, which is what a lot of young women did at the time. Taught for a year and then married Benjamin Gray, who was 20 years older than she was, and a career army officer. And they got married and moved around to a number of different places over the years. And unbeknownst to her, while they were married and living a very kind of frugal life, Benjamin had been investing in railroad stocks. And when he died in the late 50s, in the 70s, Abby, of course, 20 years younger, was in her late 50s, and she found out that she was going to inherit $1.5 million, which was quite a tidy sum back then. And she thought long and hard. She felt she had a responsibility to use the money wisely. And we're still trying to figure out exactly why and how, but she decided that what she would do with this money was to collect contemporary art by non-Western artists, which is kind of astounding and remarkable. In 1960, she established the Ben Abbey Gray Foundation, Benjamin and Abbey Gray Foundation, and in 1960 went on a trip around the world. She met up with 14 ladies in New York, and they set off and first went to Hong Kong. Japan first, and then I think it was Hong Kong. But while the other ladies were out getting souvenirs, she started meeting with artists and buying art. Here's a map of her travels over a period of time, and you can see that she traveled widely. She ended up going 8 times to Iran, 4 times to India, and 4 times to Turkey. Oops. This is an article from the Minneapolis papers about, it's the St. Paul papers, about the works from the countries that she was visiting. And she did a lot of research. She met often with various people to find out who she should visit with. She worked with the USIA. She also looked to colleagues and did quite a lot of research before she went to the countries. And as I said, she was very, very thoughtful. One of the big wonderful aspects or wonderful aspect of the gift of Abbey Wheat Grain was not only establishing NYU, the NYU Museum, the Great Art Gallery, but it was also the gift of all of her notebooks and journals and receipts. She saved everything. So we have all of her notebooks about, how she was going to spend this money, what she wanted to do, what her aspirations were. There are a couple on view here. She maintained all the correspondence she had with the artists. And so it's turned out that it has now become one of the most used aspects of the NYU archives. We have lots of scholars who come and do extended research into these papers because unfortunately within the region, there aren't that many sources that we have from that period of time. This was a book that she wrote, or a pamphlet rather, but she said she wanted to find artists who were trying to find new ways of making things, not traditional artworks, but to find and take part in that international language of modernism that Anna mentioned at the beginning, that she was looking for artists who draw on their past to create new ways of seeing, thinking, and making art. She also believed very strongly that she shouldn't just come and tell people what to think, She was buying art, but she also was encouraging dialogue. And one of the innovative ideas that she had was she wanted to show the artists that she was meeting with in these various countries what was happening close to her. So she created this portfolio of Minnesota prints by contemporary artists from the region and took this portfolio with her and then would show the artists. So this was an exhibition of what was called the Minnesota Art Portfolio. It was eventually donated to a college in Iran. She, as I said, also worked with the USIA and did a number of exhibitions that traveled, and this was communication through art. The last exhibition she organized herself was a big exhibition consisting of 1,001 works of art that was at the Minnesota World Fair, the State Fair. And she really wanted the work to be made accessible and have people come and see it. So she chose 1,001 because she liked the references to the tale of 1,001 and showed it and did a catalog that went with it. This was the invitation. This was the book that she published. So it's great to read her book, The Picture is the Window. She talks about her first trip to Iran. She arrived in Tehran and found out it was the last day of the Tehran Biennial and made a special trip to go see it. And there she realized that the artists she was looking for, there were a number of Iranian artists. And that was because the 60s was an amazing decade prior to the 60s and 70s prior to the revolution. The Shah, who was in power at the time, was really supportive of the arts, as was the Empress. And they had a number of arts festivals. Andy Warhol went there. A number of Robert Wilson, there was the Shiraz Arts Festival. And the Tehran Biennial was started by a Iranian-Armenian artist named Marcus Gregorian, who was also an artist. And she went to see the last night and fell completely head over heels with a number of works that she went on her second meeting. She also met Parviz Tangoli. Here's a picture of Abbey Wheat Grain meeting with Empress Queen Mara of Abbey, and that's Tangoli, the artist who's standing between them. one of the other things that Abby did was to establish the first foundry, casting foundry in Iran, at the University of Tehran, which is still in operation from what I understand, but given these troubled times, not sure how much has actually happened. So Parviz Tanavoli became incredibly close with Abbey Gray. He was one of the few artists who actually spoke remarkably good English. And on her second trip, she went to see an exhibition that was taking place in a bank lobby. And a young man came up and said, you know, how do you like the work? She said that she, you know, was wild about a lot of the work that she was seeing and liked it very much. It turned out that was Parviz. And he became her advisor and helped her purchase a number of works. He is one of the most respected contemporary artists of Iranian descent. He was spending a lot of time between Iran, Tehran, and Vancouver, where his family settled. And the Vancouver Art Museum is now in the process of organizing a major exhibition of his works. He's in his 80s. This is his most famous work. It's called Heech, and it's actually composed of 3 Farsi letters. And Singapin's is legible, those who read Persian. It means nothingness. So of course, this is a contradiction since it's very solid, it's sculpture. But he was getting at this play with language, and he ended up doing a number of variations, a little bit like Robert Indiana and his Love piece, which is also a sculpture and a word. So each, you can see it in a number of different guises, and he continued to work with it throughout his life. The Tehran scene, again, was really active. And this is a poster for an exhibition that the artist made himself for an atelier Kabud in 1961. It's a beautiful lithograph. And there was recently, I think it was at the Hayward Art Gallery, that looked into various nightclub spaces through the 20th century. And that they featured actually one on the Atelier Kabud in another gallery that was active in Iran at the time. Again, these are all the things that we could, some of the highlights from the Abbey Reed papers at NYU. This is another gallery that was active, Gallery Borghese. And then an exhibition. The other things that she invited Parviz Tanavoli to come to Iran, and he actually taught for a year at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. And that was a very important year for him. And there were a couple of other Iranian artists, one of his students, who came over as well. So he did have some exhibitions. This is Mrs. Gray in Tehran at Rush 29, one of the other spaces that was examined in this exhibition in London, and discussions. Gregorian is, Marcus Gregorian is the artist I referenced earlier, who not only was the curator for the Tehran Biennial for the first 2 years, but also ended up opening a gallery in Minneapolis called Universal Studios, and brought over a number of artists. This is the show that he had. And then the wonderful letters that she saved. And this is Gregorian writing to Abbey Gray, telling her of his thoughts about opening this gallery there. When I came to the Gray Art Gallery in 1997, the only artist I knew there was Sia Armajani. Before I get to Sia, let me just show this beautiful painting by Marcus Gregorian, which is right to your right there. Doesn't look so much better in person than it does in reproduction. It doesn't really translate. But he was also worked with and evoked the landscape around him, the desert, sand, and this is actually illusionistic. And we just got a recent work by him that sounds strong mud. So he was really experimenting with different ways and referencing the landscape, and I think in a really, really unusual and beautiful way. This is the new piece I mentioned that we just added to the collection. I don't know if anybody here knows the art historian Robert Hobbs, but he turned out that he worked in Tehran, setting up the museum at the Tehran Museum of Contemporary Art. Has anybody heard of TMOCA? Yeah, so the Empress started this museum, I think it was 77, a couple of years just before the revolution, and Kamran Diba was a cousin of the Empress and an artist and architect, and he designed it, and the Empress purchased some major works of American art. I think they had Jansen Pollock and a number of other, key artists from the time. And I was very, very fortunate to be able to go to Iran 6 years ago, and we went to the museum. And there's been a lot written about that collection because it's this treasure that's, unbeknownst to most of us in the West. So they don't allow any figurative works to be shown in this museum, but they do show the abstract works from time to time. And then this is this really, really interesting artist who unfortunately died way too young, Mansour Andries. He died in 1963, I think and born in 35, so as you can see, he was very, very young and died in this tragic car crash. And so there's not a lot of work, and I was thrilled when we found out we had 2 key pieces by this artist. And he's referencing folklore and folktales. So a number of the artists in Iran were part of the movement called Sakha-Khaneh, which the Sakha-Khaneh in Iran is a devotional fountain to which locks are often applied. And this one refers to just one of the folk tales. And this one also, a mythical bird. Pilaram, another really wonderful artist. Very, very important. I think his works are behind the screen, so you'll have to come around after the talk to look at them. But he's fascinating because he first studied traditional miniature painting and then drew on, again, local traditions. And so this is the announcement from his, sorry, it keeps going in and out, his exhibition at the Borghese Gallery in Tehran. Oops, wrong way, sorry. And also drew inspiration from the amazing architecture, and that was one thing that really, really impressed me, were the mosques and the traditional architecture were so stunningly beautiful. I think a lot when we talk about Iran and the Middle East now, we forget sometimes that there's these very rich cultural traditions that go back thousands and thousands of years and incredibly sophisticated. And this certainly was the case in Persia, which didn't welcome necessarily Islamic faith, but became Islamic in the 8th century. And so one of the things that these Sakha-Khaneh artists did, this group, which is sometimes referenced pop, but not really the same sensibility, is that they drew on these pre-Islamic motifs and delved back into past pre-Islamic history, Persian history. Zendarudi, another important artist, one of his major works is the lion with the sphere to your left, another fascinating artist, Rudy, moved to Paris in 1961 and has been living there ever since. And really explored a lot of the relationships between calligraphy and abstraction. This is actually the closest I come in this lecture to depicting what these traditional water fountains look like. They're grids, and these locks are a symbol of being faithful, are attached to them. So we really wanted to see one. When I traveled there with my colleague Michelle Long 6 years ago, we brought over a number of collectors. We couldn't, they were actually most prevalent, I am told, in South Tehran, which is much more working class than North Tehran, which is a little more sophisticated. But we found one in a bazaar. And then this is the artist I mentioned earlier, Lucia Armajani, who's the one person I knew I had seen works by him. And the museum does show it, Guggenheim. So are these, Sia, who just passed away about a year ago, was getting himself in trouble as a young man. He grew up in a Christian family in Tehran and was protesting the CIA coup for the prime minister. That was back in the 50s, and would hang out a lot in South Tehran, and his parents were really worried that he was going to get swept up in one of the rest. So they sent him to study in Minneapolis with his uncle, who was a professor at Macalester College. But this is one of a series of works that he called his Persian period. And it's a beautiful work. It's just to the gallery on your left, along with a bigger work where you can really see his interest in calligraphy. And then he became also in the US. He stayed in Minneapolis for the rest of his life, but he was included in Kiniston Shine's 1970 information exhibition at MoMA. And here you can see how, again, he's playing with calligraphy, but here with a totally new technology of an apple print, and playing with letters and words, and looking at the relationship. He became best known for his kind of creation of these little big sculptures, actually, within museums that simulate reading rooms, where he does put contemporary reading material in them, and they form these wonderful enclaves. He had a big solo exhibition maybe 3 or 4 years ago at the Whitney Museum of Art. That was fantastic. And another artist who's a little bit well known is Monir Farmayan, and she, again, is looking to traditional motifs. Her work, the work that she's best known for, are mirrored pieces that look like the interior of a number of mosques that we visit. And there's, this high concentration on geometry and repetition within Islamic art. And she also looked to, this was a monotype, but it was a little atypical for the work that she is best known. And then we moved to India, and India was still in the 1960s transitioning and coming to terms with what it meant to be independent, and the division, the partition between Pakistan. They had their own form of modernism there as well. But again, Abby was intrepid, and she would put together, different countries. So here you have this exhibition that she did that circulated to a number of places between India and Iran. And I mentioned the wonderful receipts and other ephemera that Abby kept. So here we, see the receipt for a painting that she had purchased in Mumbai. and then the first India Triennial of Contemporary World Art. So she helped sponsor that. She did, as I say, work with the USIA on certain projects. And she also brought Ellen Johnson and Klaus Oldenburg to India. Ellen Johnson was the former director of the Oberlin Museum, has written an important book on sculpture, history of 20th century sculpture. So here's another publication of when the show was in Delhi. And you can see the contemporary art that she helped support, the Klaus Oldenburg, the Robert Morris, and the Jackson Pollock. She really enjoyed getting to know the artists and finding out about their family and their history. So this is a work by a young artist who actually ended up, I think, leaving the art world, but it's related to, this is her mother, this is the daughter, sorry, who were very involved with the struggles that were going on in Tibet and taught, and the art schools that exist were really important way for Abby to get to know some of the key artists. And that's been one thing that I think we need to think about is what didn't she collect and what she didn't find. And in the conversation I had with my colleagues at the beginning of the catalog, that was the point that they brought up, and very much the case. I think, the strength of the show is it's Abby's vision, and Abby gets an amazing kind of slice of what was going on in these countries over that period of time. And it's missing some of the artists who have been canonized within their own countries. But it gives you a sense also of the diversity at any one period of time. And I think this is something we forget when we study art history often, is that there's, it's never just all cohesive movement that goes from abstract expressionism to minimalism to pop. It doesn't go along smoothly necessarily. There are always artists working in a number of varieties and ways. I think this is one of the more beautiful paintings that turns out was purchased in New York City. The artist was living in New York. So she pursued artists and tried to find them wherever she could, and added to her collection that way. So again, just a wide variety. She often took the art and put it in her suitcase and brought it back. So she was very adept at working and collecting these connections. And this is, again, an interesting group of artists that she got to know that were part of the family. Oh, we're going the wrong way, I'm sorry. One of the better known artists from India, Vivan Sundaram. And he's one of the artists who has become better known. And I think she was just amused by this funny collage, which I think it's the text is limoncal. And that was limited calories. So it was about a diet drink to lose weight. And here she juxtaposes one of the voluptuous, sculpture with a photograph. And he's married to the very influential artist Gita Kapoor. Turkey, also a turbulent period. Two different coups within the 20th century, artists trying to come together, face their Ottoman heritage and also become modern. And I think this one word indicates, again, that things not always what they appear. For the most part, she she wasn't overtly political. She doesn't write much about what was like in Iran in the years leading up to the revolution, but she experienced it on a personal level. She was a rather devout Episcopalian and met the Anglican bishop in Iran who was living in Isfahan, who was notably Iranian, and pointed he was married to an English woman. She became very close to the family and also created an garden in Isfahan for the family. That was supposed to be kind of a space of refuge. And the bishop's son actually lost his life during the revolution. His niece, who was one of the Amish, is now also a bishop in England today. And I was able to speak with some of the family and learn more about, Abby's relationship with them and how much of an impact she did have on the family. Turkey, this is a very interesting family. She is one of the leading ceramicists, was the leading ceramicist and did a number of mosaics. And we have, this is the one I was going back to you. Fascinating. This is a design for mosaic. And she came to making art a little bit later in life. And she was the niece also of Barhasa El-Zaid, who is a fascinating figure. Now one of Turkey's most prominent abstract artists and very cosmopolitan figure. She's exhibited across Europe and the Middle East. She had studios for a while in Istanbul and Paris and Oman. She was born into a family of Ottoman aristocrats and studied at the Academy of Fine Arts in Istanbul. Ended up first married a literary figure and then ended up marrying an Iraqi prince from a Hashemite family. So she was known as the Princess Farah Nisa al-Said, and also became known as a diplomat hostess. But there was a major show of her work at the Tate. And there's a fascinating book, a biography that has just recently come out about her as well. So if you want to get more in depth and learn about the princess, you can. And this was her sister, who had married a Hungarian violinist and then came to printmaking, encouraged by her sister. So it was very interesting to learn of these familial connections and how the artists managed. A lot of the artists did go to Paris and study there. Some went to Italy to learn, and some came to the States as well. And then just finishing up with her autobiography. So in the late 70s, early 80s, she came down with cancer, but really wanted to finish this book, which she worked very closely on with Robert Lippmann, who was the first director of the Gray, and who had traveled to Minneapolis often to visit with her. The thing that he mentions is that she was an incredibly open person. She might not always like the art or the exhibitions they would see together in New York, Minneapolis, but she would listen and look and learn, I think, throughout her life. And that's one of the more remarkable aspects, and not leave it, left the gallery totally up to the professionals who work there. I want to read one statement that I think I find incredibly important and I think very relevant for today. She wrote that, "I think of the artist as a person working with prosaic materials, paint, canvas, wood, marble, iron, who turns it into poetry. Looking deeply into a work of art makes something happen to one's own values and concepts. At first, a first glance yields the obvious, but lived with more and more communiques suggest themselves until one becomes aware of not only the obvious statements, but of extremely subtle ones. These are about another person, another time, another country, another culture, another living. Whatever values unfold, an awareness of life's potential experiences develops within oneself. Living becomes more complex and more marvelous, more tragic and more exalted, more capable of hurting and solacing. The moral issue involved in living in our high-powered, high-pressured lives seems to me to be this: we may not plead innocent. It is our obligation to keep our eyes open, to listen to the difficult and the unfamiliar, to be aware of the values cherished or abhorred by others. So I think this was written in the 70s, but I think rings true today. So thank you. I hope there's some questions or some.
So you said she wasn't really political, but in her writings in the journals, did she not allude to the fact how difficult it was for women to make these acquisitions in a place like Iran?
You know, she never, as far as I know, never direct. I think she does question, you know, what am I going to do as a single woman and how am I going to do it? But she was intrepid, and she would find various, sometimes students, sometimes companions to go with her. Jane Gregory Rubin was one person who went along and photographed who was a student. And she seemed to figure out ways to do it. So I think once the world opened up and she felt that she could do what she wanted to, which was make a difference, she just went ahead. You know, in the pictures in window, there's very little written about what was going on. But you know, this was also a highly edited. I think she might have written more in her diaries, and I haven't gone through all of them. But she does mention in the book that, you know, she mentions a child, you know, being concerned about child labor in Turkey. You know, that making these amazing rugs, you know, they must have been very difficult on the child. She mentions also one arrest in Iran that she saw of somebody being dragged. But I think she felt that, and we're trying, I think Susan Hackwood in the book writes about cultural diplomacy, soft diplomacy. And she felt that she could make a difference by getting this work out and about so that people could see. And I think she had always aspired to be a poet. She loved poetry. But I think she realized the problem with poetry is you need to know the language to read it, right? Or it needs to be translated. And she felt the visual arts didn't need that everybody could look and find something they could relate to. And that the more you looked, as she wrote, the more you saw. Other questions? Yes, in the back?
I had my voice, I don't know whether you confused it. I find it interesting when the journal paper was discussing all the film, the state plan, what you were going to have. I tried to, the book was not fully available, and I haven't heard to buy it. But my guess is the book doesn't go in the other repeat more deeply.
She does talk a little bit about that, but not as much. I was just saying that maybe we need to scan the book and make it available because it is out of print. I must say a lot of it is not that interesting. She writes about the various people she meets, but there's some gems in the book itself. And in her paper, she does, and we're actually working on the trust that she left to us, and moving it out of Minneapolis. It just moved to TIAA, but she was very tied to certain people in Minneapolis. And the story about how it comes to NYU is also funny. So, I mean, this was the other thing is, how did this woman in St. Paul, Minnesota, make this connection with NYU? She didn't attend, there wasn't any obvious link. But there was in the early 60s, I think it started in the very late 50s, I think she started watching it more in the 60s and 70s, an educational program called Sunrise Semester, which was one of the first educational programs. And it was at the time, it was on CBS. It was at 6 a.m., so she would get up at 5 a.m. to watch it in Minneapolis. And they had various NYU professors talk, and Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, Ruth Bowman talked about the NYU art collection, which was established in 1958. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays was a wonderful historian named Peter Chokowski, who I talk about, and was one of the first academic colleagues to come by and introduce himself to me. And he wrote about coffee house paintings and the pageants in 20th century Iran history. And she called Professor Chokowski and said, I'd like to show you, my slides of Iran, and, they shared a love. And I think she also met Richard Etlinghausen, who was the professor, the curator of Islamic art at the Met, who vouched for, her and saw what she was doing as a way of keeping and looking to 20th century Iran art historians, of course, only look to the ancient art. And it's only recently that art history has welcomed, historians looking at the 20th century. And that's been developing very fast, but there was not a lot to look at when I first came to the Gray. There was nothing written in English about the history of Iranian art. So anyway, she called Peter Chokowski, they started talking. She invited him to come see her collection. I think he went with, this is the storm of phone calls, with Jansen, who was teaching art history, H.W. Jansen, who's written the survey of art. And they went, and he recommended that NYU accept the gift. She had contacted other museums in Walker. She had talks with Martin Friedman, who was the legendary director there, but nobody wanted to accept 700 works of art by, unapproved artists at that point, or unknown artists. So that's happened. And she had a couple of other discussions with the Minneapolis Institute of Art. And at one point they were going to build a museum for the collection, but it was going to be in St. Paul, not the major campus. So thanks to Sunrise Semester, it came to NYU. Yes.
And how was it for you as a director coming in from the New York contemporary art scene and the Jewish museum?
It was a big learning curve for me, and that's one thing I love most about my job at the University Museum is that we get to learn about new areas. And I think it was Peter Chokowski and Shiva Balagi who came to me. I just started in '97 and said, it's the 20th year of the Iranian Revolution. We should really show the photographs of this great Iranian photo documentarian named Abbas, who had been president of Magnum Photos in Paris, and was again a figure whom I wasn't familiar with. And I said, well, that could be interesting, but we do have this collection, and maybe we combine it with, these photos of the revolution. the decade leading up to the revolution, what were the artists making? So we focused on Iran in that initial exhibition between word and image. And we ended up adding some of the revolutionary posters that were made during the time, which were fascinating, that looked very pop and Andy Warhol-like. So I learned a lot from the art itself, just looking, and then worked with a number of colleagues who are all much more, who read and write Farsi and can read the original documents and can do the research. Shiva Balagi is one. Another is Veri Daftari. She was the curator on that initial exhibition. She has just published her essays. She had come to New York and got her PhD at Columbia and has written a book about modern contemporary Iranian art. So there's much more now to look at. But it was a challenge, but it was fun. Yes, Anna?
So you said that after her husband died and she had that unexpected inheritance, she made it her mission to buy contemporary art by non-Western artists. And so I was wondering, was that prior to the trip, or once she started traveling and discovering these countries, she focused her?
No, she decided before.
Oh.
And again, we're trying to figure out why now. And we don't also know about this trip with the 14 other ladies from New York. I thought for the longest time, I thought it was a master alumni group, but it turns out it wasn't. So somehow she heard about this trip, and she had worked up and had set up a foundation in advance, and then started buying Japanese prints in other areas. I think we have about 80 Japanese prints from the 60s that we need to look at next.
But then once she started traveling, she really fell in love with these 3 countries.
Those were the countries she visited the most. Yeah. Yeah. So she felt some kind of connection in one way or another to each of the 3 countries.
There's still more research.
Yeah, there's still more research in there. The archives are sitting there.
You need a few PhD students.
Well, that's what we're hoping to do, is to develop that a little bit more and get people in to look at these amazing documents. She saved everything, and one of the issues is she saved everything in triplicate. So when you're going through these files, this looks familiar. Oh yes, that was, and then you find out that some of the copies are the onion skin paper that we remember from carbon days, those of us in the audience who remember typewriters and carbon paper. Yes?
How many pieces are in the whole collection?
So there's around 700 pieces total in the collection. There's also a number of teaks that children made, but 700 artworks, I think, comprise the collection.
So when she had the exhibition at the State Fair, there were 1,001. So what happened?
So she started dispersing the American art that she had purchased. She collected a number of American artists. The Minnesota Art Portfolio went to this college. We're not sure exactly what happened to it. And in the catalog itself, which we should probably scan and put online as well, she grouped it, but she had amassed by that point 1,000 and more than 1,000 objects, and then she eventually siphoned off some 300 works to make the collection particularly about. Although we have like 2 or 3 modern Greek works, there's a number of, I think, from a total of maybe 20 countries. But the most cohesive ones are these 3, which is why we focused on them, because the other ones were kind of initial explorations that didn't pan out. Yes, let's do up front first and then the back.
Yeah, I was wondering, why was it important for her to bring it to the US out of all?
I think she wanted the world to get along better. I think she really believed, and she writes about it in some of these brochures about communication through art. about setting up dialogues, and she didn't want it to be the top down, she wanted dialogues. So that by creating these exhibitions that toured, she felt, and they toured like sometimes up to 10 different venues across the country. And there were a number of different people who worked with her at different colleges or at different spaces. The exhibitions would be up for 3 weeks. You know, and then they often, I think, were the smaller works that could be framed and traveled easily. So yeah, somebody needs to go through and really document what was in each of those exhibitions that she did tour. But she wanted to get the word out, essentially. She wanted people to have the experience of looking at original works of art. And I think we have to remember too that this was a time, you know, pre-internet. And I mean, the other thing that she would talk about, and she arranged for some art books to come and be on view in Turkey and so forth, was that most of the reproductions in magazines at the time were in black and white. And she wanted people to see the original works of art, you know, and the color, and just look at them and understand them. Because as you can see by the slides, you know, don't do justice most of the time to the actual works of art. So in the back.
Did you ever talk about what inspired that? It's an interesting title of the book. I just wonder if you ever talked about
I think my understanding is that developed in conjunction with Bob Littman, that, you know, she had thought about it for so long, and she saw the picture as a window, which leads you into different worlds and different modes of seeing different experiences. So I think, you know, and this is something that, you know, us art historians have talked about, you know, the picture and the development of perspective, and, you know, how we look into these worlds, especially, I mean, going back to the Renaissance and so forth. Yes.
Yes, sorry. Is her foundation still focused on this part of the country to continue to bring art here, or artists?
So the foundation was dissolved after her death and after her bequest to NYU. So we are trying to continue, and we are acquiring works by younger Iranian artists. But at NYU, we don't have an acquisition fund. We're looking for somebody to create an endowed acquisition fund, if you know of anybody. And I will get very mad if that happens out of this audience. But we did do one exhibition of 3 different generations of Iranian artists, starting with Pilaram and Zendarudi and Tanaboli, and then a mid-generation Iranian artist, and then very younger artists. And I think that catalog is available online, so you can download it and take a look. And the artists very generously, the younger artists very generously gave us work. So those are on view now. We have a show called Mostly New at the Gray Art Gallery on Washington Square. So if you're in New York, come visit it. And you'll see some of these works by younger Iranian artists, and some work by Tanaboli and Gregorian as well. As recent acquisitions, mainly from the past 10 years, but we have some oldies that are recent there too. Yes?
No, we're almost out of time, but if I can squeeze one
Sure.
quick question about her legacy in terms of the institution, in relation to the other museums in New York City, in terms of, I understand these works are the largest collection of these countries of this period outside of those countries.
Right.
So can you speak?
Except for India.
Except for India.
Yeah,
Okay.
the museum in Massachusetts, I'm blanking on the name, but has a larger collection from an American collector, another American, the Horowitz collection.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering how the impact of her legacy and this collection being at NYU in relation to some of the other museums in New York City and their holdings of modern art from these countries.
So it's been interesting. I mean, the Met has been trying to collect contemporary and modern art, and they bought a piece by Tom Bowley as I mentioned, there was an extraordinary close relationship with Tom Lee, and we have 80 works by him. That's a big chunk. And so that's why we're lending a lot to the Vancouver Art Museum. And you just can't, it's much harder to acquire the works. They've also kind of been valued in the number of the artists. And getting access to them now in Iran is difficult. I know when Fergie Daftabi was writing her book, she would go back and forth to Tehran, but it's not easy, especially in the last 4 or 5 months, year. Yeah, it's been the current protests about the veil and so forth. I mean, this was the one thing that the Shah did. You know, there were some good things and bad things, obviously, but the good thing was he really encouraged women to enter into the professional fields, and you were not obligated to wear a head covering. When I did go, we did get scolded at sometimes by some of the women who was like, "You're not showing too much hair." And it was very frustrating, actually, because we had one guy with us, and the guys can just go around however they want. And we had to wear these scarves, and they kept getting in the way, and, you know, you had to keep them on all the time in public. All right, thank you so much for coming.